Previewing former President Trump's impeachment trial, one shot or two, why Fauci's telling people not to skip the second vaccine dose, and the new documentary about Britney Spears that's got everyone talking. Here's what you need to know. Good morning, this is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Tuesday, February 9th. I am Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo, good morning.
Good morning. I love when you say good morning to me like I'm your daughter. Good morning. No, I really do like it. Jill, before we start, we got a little housekeeping, my favorite, little housekeeping today. Okay, so I'm off for the rest of the week. Becky and I are gonna.
What are we gonna do?
I know. We gotta get out of this apartment, or I'm probably gonna get a divorce.
What are you guys gonna do?
No, I'm just kidding. We're going upstate. We just rented
Nice.
I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do. It's like 10 degrees outside, but we got to get out of this apartment for a couple of days. So we're gonna take a little break. But Jill, you've got some special guest hosts to hold down the fort, I believe. Also, President's Day is Monday. There's not gonna be a podcast because that is a holiday for us at Cheddar because we follow the market holidays. Also, just while we're on the topic of housekeeping, remember, you can always email us. Our email address, Need2Know, the number 2 @cheddar.com. We respond to those, even if it takes us a day or two. You can watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/cheddar now, if you want to see Jill tease me about whatever I'm wearing that day. And leave us a review on Apple. It really makes a difference. And you can also reach us on Twitter. Jill is, I believe, at Jill Wagner TV, and I am at Carlo_Versano. So we're always on there if you want to reach us that way.
And I will say there is nothing better than when obviously we enjoy that praise is always wonderful, but I even prefer corrections and or just insight onto stories that we've discussed. For example, yesterday, I thought this was really fascinating. Someone who works for the company Indeed, which is that hiring hiring app that Carlo was basically ripping the commercial. The Super Bowl commercial.
She was not.
And she basically told you what's up, and I loved it, saying that all of those people in the commercial are real people who have found jobs through that app, and they are not just actors and actresses. So I
was being a little glib
that.
yesterday. Yes, and I will eat crow when it's time to eat crow. I have no problem eating crow on this podcast, as you know.
Me as well. Okay, so let's get to some news. And Carlo, a well-deserved vacation. I'm excited for you and Becky to get some sleep. All right. Donald Trump will become the first former president to stand trial in the Senate later today. House prosecutors plan to argue that Trump committed, quote, a grievous constitutional crime by inciting a violent mob that attacked the Capitol. His defense lawyers will argue that the trial is unconstitutional and that the former president had a First Amendment right to claim that the election was stolen and tell his supporters to fight like hell. The defendant will not be in attendance. No witnesses are expected to be called. So in English, that means Donald Trump's not going to be there and he's not taking the stand. The prosecution is going to rely heavily on video evidence from January 6th to make their case. The trial starts at 1 p.m. Eastern time today. It's going to last at least for the remainder of the week, probably into next week.
So Democrats not going to call witnesses. I think that's probably a mistake. But they are going to go big on visuals, like you said. I think they're really going to try and make this like a sort of cinematic prosecution, if you will. I'll be curious if people tune in. I think given, first of all, that Trump's no longer in office, so there's sort of like less of it sort of like feels a little less I don't know, relevant, I guess is the word I would use. Also, the outcome is preordained, right? I mean, it's pretty clear at this point that the Senate is not going to vote to convict. But I think if the prosecution and the Democrats do a good job and they lay the case out well, I think what it will do is will make it harder for Republicans to listen to that and then vote to acquit, because the evidence is going to be right there. And sort of like the last time he was impeached, it's sort of a cut and dry case here. I mean, all you got to do is sort of look at the tape. So I've said in the past that I don't really care about this. This is important, I think, despite me saying that. I think even if everybody and their mother sort of wants to forget about President Trump right now and sort of focus on the things that we need to focus on in this country, look, what he did in the period between November 3rd and January 6th was unconscionable. And in my opinion, it was treasonous. And it cannot happen again. That's the most important thing. There have to be some consequences, some guardrails to that kind of behavior, even if those consequences aren't satisfying. So that being said, I'm leaving you I'm leaving you with the bag on impeachment, Jill. I will be in a Trump-free zone. So good luck to you. But actually, I'll be following along. So maybe if something makes me particularly upset or annoyed, I'll call in.
Our first ever caller. You could just email me too, and I'll express your opinion. Yeah. We are going to have some great guests though. Eugene Daniels, who's with Politico now and who's awesome, is going to come on tomorrow. Moshe Winunu, who we've had before, he's going to come on at least Friday, I believe, potentially Thursday and Friday. So we'll have some smart people, Carlo, filling in for you because it's historic. Never forget about you, Carlo. Let's talk.
No, it is historic. It absolutely is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think just really quickly. The Trump team is going to argue if his words should be taken literally or figuratively, right? This idea of fight like hell, which he told these protesters, was that a literal call to action, or was that just a figurative, turn of phrase? So I guess that's part of the argument. I think Democrats are going to try and say it was not just about what happened on January 6th. He was laying the groundwork for calling the election a fraud before the election, so that all of this was very, very well coordinated and calculated. So I think that's going to be the crux of the arguments, but we shall see. Let's talk a little COVID, Carlo. Dr. Fauci continuing to say that it is imperative that people get both doses of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccines, disagreeing with some experts who have said that it makes more sense for as many people as possible to get the first shot and then worry about the second later. Even though just one dose provides some significant immune response, the second dose is critical to stopping the spread of variants, according to Fauci. Meanwhile, the cases continuing to drop nationwide. Some more restrictions are easing. In New York City, indoor dining is going to return this Friday. That is earlier than expected. City middle schools are going to resume in-person class later this month. Texas Republican Congressman Ron Wright, he has actually passed away after contracting COVID-19, becoming the first sitting member of Congress to die of the virus.
Terrible. He was also fighting cancer, so it just shows you that those comorbidities are what gets you, right? I was thinking about this. The COVID news right now, it's so confusing, right? And it gives me whiplash. And again, I think about this stuff all day. So I'm just thinking, like, if I get this confused, like, I can imagine what people who aren't as plugged into this must be thinking. It's like, oh, this is great news, but there's some bad news coming. Oh, but this is really good where cases are up, but the variants are on their way. I just want to appreciate that that's where we are right now, and it's like really it's really hard to sort of make hay of it. So I remain cautiously optimistic about the state of things. Again, I may be eating crow on this when we're talking about the fourth or fifth wave in a couple of weeks, but I think that we're continuing to underplay the efficacy of these vaccines. The vaccines are really ramping up. Citi Field here in New York is opening as the second big vaccination site later this week. That's happening in other states. I'm now hearing anecdotally about people in a friend of mine who's a public school teacher who's just a 35-year-old guy. He's getting his vaccine this week. So it's starting to open up more than just older folks and people with those comorbidities. But also, Jill, I mean, I'm feeling it like I'm just hitting that wall right now. I don't know about you. I'm sure if I am, you're probably even more so.
Hit that wall. That wall has been hit, smashed. Is there like a fourth wall? Is that a thing that you can hit? So I think that you make a great point. And look, even the Dr. Fauci coming out and saying, no, you need the two vaccines, because it was not, I think it was Monday or last week even that we were talking about just this idea of, are they going to switch the vaccine strategy and say more people should get one vaccine, worry about the second vaccine later because these new variants, and now he's saying, no, you need two vaccines to protect against variants. Mask wearing, so now there's some people who say no, when you wear two, it actually creates more air spaces. I mean, look, the science is so incredibly confusing. And the numbers are trending in the right direction. However, I'm going to just read a tweet that got me thinking, because the problem right now is this UK variant that is basically doubling its presence in this country every 10 days. In Florida, even quicker than that. It's doubling every 9 days, and there's fear that because of Tampa Bay and the Super Bowl that it's going to just it's just going to take over even quicker. And we've seen what has happened in places where this particular variant is prevalent, right? In the UK, we saw what happened. Yeah. We saw an explosion of cases, an explosion of deaths. Eric Feigelding, who is an epidemiologist who I follow on Twitter, wrote, 2 different COVID-19 pandemics. Many think with cases dropping that pandemic is nearly over. But truth is, there are now 2 different SARS-CoV-2 pandemics diverging. The old strain is waning, while the more contagious B.1.1.7 strain, that's the UK strain, is dominating, and we will soon be slammed very hard. So it's like, I feel like, are we in the calm before the storm here? I don't know. Yeah. Or can vaccines potentially soften the blow of this first wave of this new strain? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the vaccines are going to start to help.
President Biden has acknowledged that the Democrats' proposal to raise the federal minimum wage to $15 may not make it into the final stimulus bill because of resistance from Republicans and some moderate Dems over its cost. So now we have a better idea of what the price tag is, thanks to an updated analysis from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, the CBO, estimating that a $15 minimum wage would cost about 1.4 million jobs over the next 4 years as it gets phased in, but it would also deliver raises to 27 million Americans, 900,000 of whom would be lifted out of poverty. That analysis is likely to make it more difficult, not less, for Democrats to pass the proposal.
Yeah, this is a straight cost-benefit analysis, right? In my opinion, the cost is worth it. But I'm also not a small business owner in Alabama whose payroll would essentially double if this became law. This is the minimum wage. That $15 minimum wage is a real debate, and there's good faith arguments on both sides. But like everything else, right, it gets bastardized into these sort of like ridiculous talking points. One of them is for opponents of the $15 minimum wage say things like, $15 minimum wage means that your Subway sandwich is going to cost $20. No, that it's not. I mean, it may cost $7.50 instead of $7. That's possible because that's how businesses are going to end up passing the labor costs on. Also, a lot of places, New York City included, they have a $15 minimum wage. And from what I can gather, the effects have been relatively benign. I mean, there's certainly major issues in the hospitality industry, but that has to do with COVID less than this. They were sort of able to pass those costs from the $15 wage hike onto consumers. I remember when I was in a coffee shop, that's what they did. They just raised the prices of the coffee like 50 cents. So look, a lot of these jobs are going to go away, but that has a lot more to do with automation than minimum wage standards, I think. But look, my take on the stimulus as it is right now is I've been saying they should really means test these checks because I don't need it. And it's true. I don't need another check from the government. But at the same time, it's like so many people are hurting right now. Crises are a terrible thing to waste, as Rahm Emanuel famously said. And Democrats have an opportunity here to swing for the fences, not just with the minimum wage, but sort of like with their overall spending package. Everything from helicopter money to child benefits. I say go for it and, see what happens. I don't think the minimum wage is going to end up in the $1.9 trillion package, as Biden has said. I think that'll be the first thing to go. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of where I stand.
Switching gears, it's about to get crowded, at least relatively speaking, on Mars. 3 separate space rovers are set to visit the red planet this month, starting with United Arab Emirates. Hope probe reaching orbit today. The Hope is the first ever Arab space mission, timed to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the UAE's unification. The Hope's mission is to stay in orbit around the planet for 1 Martian year, which is 687 days.
Can you imagine that if a year was 687 days? Imagine if last year.
That's how long 2020 was, right?
Yeah, yeah, at least. But yeah, so the UAE probe hits orbit today. It's going to be followed by China's Tianwen-1, which comes into orbit tomorrow. So this really is sort of like a little traffic jam in space. And both of those are going to sort of orbit for a little while. The China probe is going to try and touch down on the surface in May. But before that, NASA's Perseverance rover shows up next week, and it's not going to orbit at all. It's going to go right in for the landing on the afternoon of February 18th. So that could be exciting. But yeah, exciting couple of weeks for space nerds everywhere. And it's just, I mean, it's remarkable when you think about it, right? I mean, these are like the 5th and 6th countries that are going to reach Mars this week.
Incredible.
I mean, if you said that 20 years ago, you'd be like, no way.
Even with what SpaceX is doing right now, I feel like basically every week, usually on a Monday, we're reporting on some sort of SpaceX launch, and it's become no big deal. But it is a big deal. It is a big deal that you have these private companies now partnering with NASA here in the United States, of course, and this is the next generation of space travel. And by the way, with Jeff Bezos stepping down from Amazon, we did get a lot of insight. I know we were joking that he's going to just, take off and go to a private island somewhere. Not the case. The guy's probably going to be working even harder. One of the things mentioned was Blue Origin, which was his space travel company. So I wouldn't.
It was
be
a Super Bowl
surprised
commercial.
What did you say?
Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
It was a Super Bowl commercial. It was I think it was for the SpaceX, the civilian mission that they're going to try and go up later this year. You're right. We should talk more about SpaceX because it is actually phenomenal what they're doing.
Okay, so mark that in your calendar for next week after your vacation, Carlo. I feel like you'll probably do some space reading or something while you're upstate in your cabin.
Oh, I've got a new book. I'm excited to crack it.
Okay. Meanwhile, Serena Williams has heard everyone saying Tom Brady is the GOAT, and some of her fans would like a word with all of us. Serena, a longtime admirer of Brady, by the way, is a front and center down under at the Australian Open. She's chasing her 24th Grand Slam singles title, which would tie her with Margaret Court's record. She easily put away Laura Sigmund of Germany in the first round as she debuted a new one-legged Nike catsuit, an homage to the late track star Florence Griffith Joyner. Serena plays in the second round this morning.
You see that? You see that outfit?
I didn't see it, but I can imagine.
She's badass, man. Brady versus Serena. One thing that Serena Williams has over Tom Brady is that Tom Brady never won a Super Bowl while pregnant. And Serena Williams, what did she win? Wimbledon while pregnant, or the U.S. Open? I forget.
I think that she won the Australian Open.
She won a major while pregnant. I mean, that alone is like, that's just insane.
First trimester, nonetheless, where you basically want to kill yourself every day because you feel so sick.
Yeah. The thing with these debates is I feel like you can never really declare like a sports-wide GOAT, greatest of all time. Like you can declare a GOAT in individual sports, like Jordan is the GOAT of the NBA. Tom Brady is the GOAT of the NFL. I think Serena Williams will soon become the GOAT of pro tennis. Muhammad Ali in boxing. But like you can't say like, oh, Tom Brady is like a better athlete than Serena Williams or vice versa, because they're doing different things.
I agree. It's apples and oranges. I mean, one is a team sport, one is an individual sport. It's a totally different thing, and I agree. It's you kind of just have to, I think, admire all of them on their own for what they've done, and all of their accomplishments are incredible. It is fun though. It's a fun conversation when everything else is so darn gloomy.
Yeah.
A New York Times documentary that premiered last week, bringing some new attention to the case of Britney Spears' conservatorship. Is that how you pronounce that word? Conservatorship,
yeah.
So Framing Britney Spears is produced by The Times, and it's streaming on FX and Hulu. It follows Spears' meteoric rise, I can't speak this morning, in the early 2000s, focusing on the court-ordered conservatorship and the ensuing legal battle between Spears and her father. The Free Britney hashtag's been trending on social media for days, with celebs like Miley Cyrus and Bette Midler among those lending their support to the pop star.
Did you see this yet?
I haven't seen it, so everyone is talking about it though, so tell me everything.
So it's worth. I mean, I didn't even know this existed, but I watched it at Becky's behest on Sunday. It was actually an incredible piece of documentary journalism. The conservatorship stuff is interesting and it's infuriating in a lot of ways. But what was really shocking, and why I would recommend anybody, especially anybody in our business, watch this, is this documentary puts up these clips of Britney Spears being interviewed by major news outlets when she was effectively a child, right? When she was just coming onto the scene. I think she was like 17, maybe 18 years old. And you've got these interviewers asking her like the grossest questions, literally like, "Are you a virgin, Britney?"
Who asked her that?
I think it was like at some press junket. Some foreign journalist starts an interview by saying, "I want to start by asking you about your boobs." Like, Diane Sawyer, there's this clip of Diane Sawyer with this primetime ABC News interview in which she's talking about what Britney Spears thinks about somebody on the internet who called to have her murdered for setting a bad example for her kids. And Diane Sawyer is like, "What do you think about that? Does that person have a point?" It's like, great question, Diane. Why don't you shut up? Matt Lauer, I mean, Britney Spears goes on the Today Show at one point. Matt Lauer makes her apologize to the country because the paparazzi took photos of her driving with her baby in her lap while she's in the middle of like having a nervous breakdown. It's like, why don't you apologize, Matt Lauer? Shut up. It's just, I say this, watch it for a reminder of how our culture treated young women up until recently, still in some ways, but it's like out of another era. And this was only 20 years ago, 10 years ago in some of these instances. The media did this woman so dirty. And, people in our profession, they wonder why people hate the news media, why we are so loathed. You watch this documentary and you start to understand that.
You have definitely piqued my interest, Carlo, and there's a reason child stardom is not all it's cracked up to be. It's hard enough to be a regular teenager, and when you think about what you go through just growing up in general, and then to have to do it all in the public eye.
You just feel for this poor girl. I mean, she's basically like plucked out of rural Louisiana and becomes this overnight sensation. And like, there's clearly nobody really who is really fighting for her in her corner. And it's just really sad.
Yeah. I mean, the stars who are kids who wind up making it to, and being centered and everything, they seem to, the theme is that they have the parents who look out for them.
Right.
I'm not that familiar with this, so I'm not even going to speak about it, but I think you make a great point, and maybe I will give that a whirl.
Yeah, check it out. It's good.
All right, Carlo, we're going to miss you. Have a great week. Enjoy your time off. Get some rest, and not to be cliche, but, just even enjoy the next few days.
I appreciate it. And, hold down the fort for me. I will be back together, next Tuesday after the holiday?
Yeah. All right, everyone, that's what you need to know for Tuesday, February 9th.
All right, guys. See you soon.